Some old-school boomers with white hair might still remember the Viewmaster. That kind of toy binoculars where you'd insert a disc of images and view them one by one backlit. Well, it was one of those discs that gave me the idea to ride the Via Francigena. For those unfamiliar with its history, these images take us back to the year 990 AD. That's when the Archbishop of Canterbury, Sigaric, traveled all the way to Rome to receive the pallium directly from Pope John XV. Sigaric was the first to note down and describe the 80 stages of his journey to Rome. And based on those notes, the route we now know as the Via Francigena was born. The section I chose to follow is the Italian stretch of the route. It has since been adapted for modern-day pilgrims who choose to ride instead of walk, a roughly 1,000-kilometer trail that begins at the gates of Aosta and ends in Rome. It all starts in Aosta, passing under the ancient Porta Praetoria, where thousands of pilgrims once crossed the city on foot before reaching the old Roman stone bridge, already 1,000 years old when Sigaric himself passed over it. From there, to exit the tight valley wedged between the Alps, you immediately join a mixed-use bike trail, shared with walkers and hikers on the Francigena. After a few kilometers, the landscape opens up, and the road becomes an absolute treat for cyclists, a gentle, continuous descent with only a few scattered bridges interrupting the flow. About 40 kilometers in, I pass through the town of Verrey, overlooked by one of the most iconic medieval fortresses in the entire Aosta Valley, the Castle of Verrey, perched on a rocky outcrop high above the valley floor. Beyond the village, you have to watch for signs to pick up the Francigena's gravel route again. It's important to know there are two official paths, the pedestrian one and the cycling route, each marked with a different logo. If you mistakenly follow the footpath, it's easy to end up on bike-unfriendly terrain, forcing you to turn around, cursing a few saints along the way. Leaving Ivrea behind, the path continues downhill for a few kilometers, until I reach Castello Rondolino, right in the heart of Cavaglia, a town already mentioned by Sigaric in his diary. Here, as in many other places along the way, budget pilgrim hostels offer overnight stays for just a few euros. I set off in the cool of dawn, passing Santia, to enter the long series of rice fields that characterize the province of Vercelli. The rice fields will keep me company for many kilometers on an easy route on a dirt road, but without any elevation gain, crossing the vast geological basin that is the Great Po Valley. I cycle at a good pace, interrupted from time to time by encounters with pilgrims who, on foot, share the Francigena route with us cyclists on many stretches. It is an easy gravel route, with 3 well-maintained dirt roads and open, breathable landscape. Everything you need to enjoy a carefree ride. The kilometers glide by almost effortlessly until I reach the Tesino Park, where I hop onto some single tracks I know like the back of my hand. These trails are among my favorite training grounds, and riding them feels like home. Here, the Via Francigena, also known as Eurovelo 5, winds through the park, along the southern bank of the Ticino River, whose bends accompany you until you reach the covered bridge of Pavia, a reconstruction of a medieval bridge destroyed during World War II, which leads you into the historic center of the city. Tonight, a bed awaits me along the banks of the Ticino River. And after Pavia, the Piacenza section begins. This section takes me to the entrance of the Apennines, passing first through Oriolita, where the spectacular 18th century Villa Litacarini stands, and where King Umberto I also stayed. A few kilometers further south, I'd hope to follow in Sigaric's literal footsteps by crossing the Po River, using the Transitum Padi, a traditional ferry crossing for pilgrims. The boat still operates, but unfortunately only once a day in the afternoon. I can't wait that long, so I cross the Po River on the Piacenza Bridge and rejoin the route from there. From here to Fidenza, The Via Francigena winds through fields and gravel roads, a simple stretch, no real climbs. My legs spin effortlessly and the kilometers melt away. I slip quietly into Fidenza under the arches of the old town hall, which has watched over the city for more than 800 years. Now, after so much flat land, the real challenge begins. The great dance of the Apennines. Here lies the highest point of the entire Francigena. It's nothing extreme, not comparable to Alpine passes, but some steep double-digit climbs on the road to Rome definitely leave their mark. It's October, and the foliage puts on a spectacular show. The mountains are ablaze with changing colors, and every trail looks like a painting. The first ramps begin just past Fornovo, and after a few hours of riding I reach the sign for Passo della Cisa. But beware, it's a misleading sign. You still have to push uphill for several hundred meters before you can claim you've reached the highest point of this journey. From the top of the Cisa Pass, the road opens wide, initially smooth and fast, with soft sweeping curves. But the further you descend, the narrower and rougher the pavement becomes. And then the landscape opens up, revealing the green heart of the Apennines, glowing in its autumn colors until the village of Pontremoli appears, the last settlement before leaving Emilia-Romagna. From up here, you can finally glimpse the sea, the Tyrrhenian, which for centuries pilgrims only saw from a distance. And so it is for me too, because my Francigena route bends inland. Soon, I reach the ruins of Luni, once a bustling Roman port that shipped marble from nearby Massa Carrara. Above it stands the Malaspina Castle, already famous in Sigeric's day, still watching over the road. By evening, the walls of Lucca come into view. It's impossible to pass through Lucca without taking time to explore the ancient city, enclosed by its intact Renaissance walls. Riding through the narrow alleys lined with centuries-old houses, I pass one marvel after another, like the Church of San Frediano, the oldest place of worship in the city. I end the ride in Piazza dell'Anfiteatro, entering through one of the 4 original gateways. The piazza's elliptical shape is all that remains of the Roman amphitheater it once was. As darkness falls, the square comes alive with dozens of little restaurants. Tonight for me, a glass of red wine and a bowl of farro soup. After Lucca, the Francigena changes rhythm. The tires leave the pavement and most of the route turns to gravel again. The sound of crushed stone under my wheels now accompanies every pedal stroke. To keep a good pace, I have to push harder on the pedals. And yes, the fatigue sets in faster too. Rows of vineyards lead me toward Capiano, where the Medici Bridge marks another historic stop on Sigeric's journey. Perfectly preserved, it now houses a beautiful pilgrim hostel. After crossing the bridge, the Francigena cuts back into the countryside. The road gently climbs through a landscape of endless vineyards and olive groves. It's rare to meet another soul out here. The only sound is the crunch of my wheels on dirt, breaking the silence all around me. At every turn, new vistas open up. Stone farmhouses, grapevine-covered slopes, tiny hilltop villages that appear and disappear behind the rolling hills. This part of Tuscany is in constant motion, non-stop ups and downs, narrow roads, fast stretches, and sudden ramps that force you to shift gears and adjust your rhythm. Then, the land flattens just enough to reveal the church of Santa Maria Assunta in Chianni, simple, silent, surrounded by green. Among these Tuscan hills, the gradients never end. The autumn colors enchant at every meter, every pedal stroke, as I draw closer to San Gimignano. I enter the city through the historic Porta San Matteo, riding through narrow streets where every wall seems to whisper stories of art and history. I circle Piazza della Cisterna, still radiating medieval charm, then reach Piazza del Duomo, where I'm surprised by a man dressed as Dante Alighieri. He greets me with a passage from the Divine Comedy, Ulysses' Tale.
Ma, amici miei, per l'alto mare aperto, sol con un legno e con quella compagna picciola, dalla qual non fui dicerto, l'un lido e l'altro ed infine la Spagna, in el Morocco.
I would have stayed for hours listening to him, but Rome was calling me. And once I set off again, I found myself back on dirt roads and on a route that seemed to be made up of a succession of postcards. A little asphalt reappears just a few kilometers before Poggibonsi, but then once past the village, the dirt paths reappear almost immediately. And so the great gravel dance resumes on the dirt roads of Tuscany, cycling along a beautiful stretch of dirt road. Really smooth and easy. About 20 kilometers to the next destination without any challenging climbs or dizzying slopes that break your legs. It's smooth sailing at a fast pace, while all around the hills and views flaunt that unmistakable charm typical of Tuscany. The town of Monteriggioni, one of the oldest villages in Italy, shines from the top of a hill with its stone crown. Then I just need to follow the signs for the Via Francigena to get to Siena, where I enter from the south, passing under Porta Romana, where a climb of over 20% forces me to put my foot down to reach the city center. I find it difficult to talk about Siena. Here you could spend weeks wandering through its streets. Everywhere you look, everything seems to speak of history, art, beauty, culture, and traditions. And so, speaking of tradition, a visit to Piazza del Campo, the square of the Palio, is a must. Just approaching it with your imagination, you can almost hear the rumbling of drums and the shouting of the crowd, the sound of hooves on the ground. It is as if the atmosphere of the Palio can be felt in the air, even if only imagined. The square has a circumference of 333 meters. Cycling is strictly prohibited, but imagine the satisfaction of walking around it. Leaving Siena, I have less than 300 kilometers left to Rome. Now the road unveils its full character, an endless sequence of rolling hills, relentless and unforgiving. There's not a single meter of flat. Each hill hides another, and after every climb there's another, and another, on and on. Around me, only silence and the sound of my wheels biting into the gravel. I ride through rows lined with cypress trees and vineyards heavy with ripe grapes ready for harvest. Scattered across the hills are those ever-present, magnificent Tuscan farmhouses. On the horizon, even though the summit is hidden in clouds, Monte Amiata appears, the highest peak in Tuscany. The medieval fortress of Radicofani towers over the valley. But the village itself is tiny, and when I arrive, it feels nearly deserted. I can't even find a bar for a much-needed coffee. Crossing the Paglia River, I officially enter Lazio, the seventh and final region of the Francigena. From here, there are still a few tough climbs ahead, but once they're done, the path becomes more gentle, more rideable, still full of surprises. Take Acquapendenti, for example. Along the road stands a basilica whose crypt, according to legend, holds a copy of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. The crypt is indeed spectacular, but as for the authenticity of the Holy Sepulchre copy, I remain highly skeptical. From the basilica, it is only a few kilometers on paved road before reaching the dirt road that, after a short time, leads me to the northernmost part of Lake Bolsena, and then runs along its eastern shore, with the view of the lake opening up on my right at times. It is fascinating to know that although Archbishop Sigeric did not describe the stage passing through Bolsena in detail, we know for certain that he passed through here. The calm waters and dirt roads that cross cultivated fields accompany me for the entire distance I need to reach my destination for the evening. The city of Bolsena is also my penultimate stop, 120 kilometers to Rome. I enter Bolsena through Porta Fiorentina, and then, passing through the narrow streets of the Old Town, I climb up to the Monaldeschi fortress, where the 16th century church of S. Salvatore is located, to enjoy the sunset. Today has been a long day. I set out early for the final stage, leaving the lake behind and soon reaching Montefiascone, home of the famous wine Est Est Est. The town is charming, but the story behind the wine is even better. According to tradition, the German prelate Johannes Defug sent his servant, Martino, ahead to scout inns with good wine. Martino would mark these places with the word Est. When he reached Montefiascone, the wine was so good he wrote it 3 times. Est Est Est. After Montefiascone, I find one of the most surprising segments of the entire route, a stretch of the original Via Cassia, dating back to the 3rd century BC. The huge basalt stones are incredible, but riding a bike over them, let's just say your backside won't find them quite as incredible. The Francigena now cuts through the central part of ancient Etruria. Just past Viterbo, I head for the Etruscan Tagliate, ancient sunken roads carved into the volcanic rock over 2,000 years ago. They were used as sacred routes and transport corridors, and legend has it, also for ritual practices. Believe me, walking through them isn't just a dive into history, it's truly haunting. The most challenging part of the journey is behind me, and now that I'm here in Lazio, I can proceed quickly. Today's next destination is Sutri, whose origins are lost in legend, which claims it was founded in ancient times by the god Saturn, from whom it took its name. It's lunchtime. For me, it's cacio e pepe and a glass of Est 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 before visiting the archaeological park. The archaeological site of Sutri is unmissable and spectacular, with its ancient Roman amphitheater dating back to the 2nd century BC. It could seat up to 7,000 people, but what is astonishing is that there are no supporting walls. It was built entirely by digging into the tough rock. Just outside the theater is an Etruscan necropolis with 64 tombs carved out of the rock. And not far away is an ancient pagan place of worship. Originally dedicated to the Persian god Mithras, and later consecrated to the Virgin Mary, this church is also entirely carved out of tuff, but the real marvel is the ceiling and walls, beautifully frescoed with paintings dating back to the early Christian era. The last gift of the Francigena Way is the Monte Gelato waterfalls. It seems that they have been visited since prehistoric times. And finally, here is Rome, the Eternal City. Fortunately, you can reach the city center by bike in complete safety, avoiding the chaotic traffic on a wonderful bike path that runs along the Tevere. A coffee and a quick look at the Francigena guide to find the directions that should take me to the end of my journey in Piazza San Pietro, where it is impossible to even think of entering given the crowds of faithful. But then again, in Sigarik's day, the Cathedral of Rome was San Giovanni in Laterano, towards which I direct my wheels. It was from here that the Archbishop returned home, and it is from here that I too return home.